Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Den Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hooker here, and today's episode is my Heisman rankings after Week 6 of college football. Let's get into it. Number 5, Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mendoza is now on the biggest stage at Indiana, where last season he was at Cal and he looked very promising. Now this season, on the biggest stage with Indiana, throwing for 16 touchdowns, throwing for over 1,200 yards so far this season, makes him one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten and also in the country. Having multiple games with over 90% completion rate and only having one interception looks to me as Fernando Mendoza is the real deal, and he's having Indiana repeat the success that they had since last year. But the only thing that I can say about Indiana is that they haven't played a true competitor yet. Because yes, you can say they played Illinois, but they beat Illinois 63-10. So is that a showing of how good Indiana can be, or is that a showing of how bad Illinois is and how fraudulent they are? So they have a big test coming up against Oregon this week. So we'll see how good Mendoza can be. So now for number 4, Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed has done a great job of being a quarterback this season. Yes, he was good at being a leader of the offense, trying to make sure things are going well enough to put some points on the board. But now this season, we've seen explosive plays through the air. We've seen him maneuver through the pocket. Trust his footwork. Trust his offseason work that he did with his quarterback coach to make sure that he can be the best version of himself this season, and has shown throughout this season. With him already throwing for over 1,200 yards, being amongst the top quarterbacks in the SEC in passing yards, shows me that he's really worked on his game. He's not only a great athlete, but a great quarterback. He's also a good enough thrower of the football to put the football where only his wide receivers can get it. So trust, when I believe Texas A&M can go however Marcel Reed performs. So Marcel Reed can take him to the promised land if he plays like he is and he takes it up a notch when it comes playoff time. Because I truly believe Texas A&M is an SEC title contender, and I truly believe that Texas A&M is a national title contender. So let's see how far they can keep going, because they have a test this week against Florida, who's coming off a big victory against Texas, who made Arch Manning go through some growing pains in that game. So watch out for Marcel Reed, because he's looking like the truth this season. Number 3, Dante Moore. This Oregon quarterback has done a lot of things differently than most quarterbacks in today's age. He went to Oregon to sit behind Dylan Gabriel for a year, and now he has full command of his offense. It has shown him extending plays, him already showing up in the big moments against Penn State. Dante Moore outdueled Drew Aller in that game. Dante Moore has looked like a future first-round pick. So if Dante Moore can continue this trend of him commanding this offense, Oregon versus Ohio State, it's going to be a thriller. This game, because Oregon has a test this week with Indiana, if they can win that game in Eugene and then head to face Ohio State, Oregon, Ohio State, college game day, whatever you do, take off, because Oregon, Ohio State will have a lot of plays being made that game. And I do believe that Dante Moore will be amongst a lot of those plays. So, Oregon quarterback, Dante Moore, number 3. Number 2, Alabama quarterback, Todd Simpson. Todd Simpson, after the Florida State game, he arguably has been the most hottest quarterback in college football. He stepped up in the Georgia game. He showed Wisconsin that I'm one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. There's nothing you can do about it. He went perfect against Monroe. And he was efficient enough in against Vandy to win that game and throw for over 300 yards. He's the leading passer in SEC with over 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns, only one interception. Todd Simpson looks like an NFL prospect and looks like one of the better NFL prospects this season at the quarterback position. So when I hear about Todd Simpson and how preseason they didn't know what people were getting out of Todd Simpson, I said to myself, I said it on the episode earlier, Todd Simpson fixed Alabama's offense better than Jalen Milroe. And it has shown. He's been getting Jeremy Bernard, wide receiver one list. Miami transfer Isaiah Horton, now going into another pass-heavy offense. Then you have Ryan Williams. Although he has some mistakes, he's still like Ryan Williams. And that's all because of Todd Simpson. Todd Simpson has made this thing work. He's the engine behind Alabama's offense. If Todd Simpson is not rolling, this Alabama offense is not rolling. So, shout out to Todd Simpson for getting this train rolling and making sure that Alabama is still held to a standard that we all know for, that Alabama football is known for. So, my new number one, because John Mateer is injured right now. If John Mateer was still playing, John Mateer would still be my number one. No questions asked. But now, my new number one, Carson Beck. Carson Beck, in every big game this season, Carson Beck has shown up and showed out. Notre Dame, he showed up. USF, he showed up. Florida State, he showed up in a big way. Because you have to shout out to his O-line for giving him time. Because what I've always said about Carson Beck is a great processor when it comes to throwing the football. Because he can go through his reads, probably arguably the fastest out of anybody in the nation. But Carson Beck can dissect your defense, make your defensive coordinator look like a fool, and can make things go in that sense. And also, you have to credit his offensive coordinator. You have to shout out his wide receiver core, because Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels look like arguably one of the best duos in the nation. So when you have those two, and you have Carson Beck, who's a seasoned quarterback, who's been in many big games because of Georgia, and because his time at Georgia has prepared himself for moments like this season at Miami, because Georgia football is in the spotlight all the time. He was heavily scrutinized last season, and some to a fault, but you gotta think, he had over 900 drop yards. So when I say to myself, okay, how good is Carson Beck? Let's see how he can translate from Georgia to Miami. And he has to answer that call. And I do believe that Miami is the best team in the ACC. And the drop-off between Cam Moore and Carson Beck is not as near as drastic as what people would have thought it would have been. But also, Carson Beck has made this offense look elite. And Carson Beck is still a really good leader, because Miami players gravitate towards him whenever times get tough or whenever the bell needs to be answered or he needs to answer that call. He goes ahead, rallies the troops, and he answers that call, and he does it very well. So Carson Beck is my number one. And if the Heisman race were to end the day, Carson Beck would be my Heisman winner. Thank you, folks, for coming on to another episode of Sports Dan Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hooker, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.